Hello, everyone. So, we are back for another episode of the Wired for Success podcast. And today we are continuing on the conversation we had last week, which was parents and teenager. How can we create more bridges instead of barriers? And this time we want to put the accent on conflict because when there's conflict, really and truly, nobody thinks about creating any bridges. All you think about is putting my point across and nothing else. If you are a parent, you want to be in control of the situation, say what you've got to say and be heard. If you are a teenager, you want to also put your point of view and really and truly often you want to leave and not be in the conflict zone. I don't know for you, Steve, but this is what happens.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
Um,
we have the duo of the Wired for Success podcast, my colleague Steve Costello and myself, Patience Modevi. And today, this is what we're talking about. Conflict in the conflict zone, I'm going to say, brackets, in the conflict zone. How do we create more bridges and less barriers? We already spoke about quite a bit last week, not over the conflict, but more over what can we do as parents to create an environment where we can create more, I would say, I don't want to say successful necessarily, but more um, manageable circumstances. Because really and truly, if we look at everything, is there a right or a wrong? There isn't. It's all about perspective. And we're in a conflict, you're not really looking at somebody else's perspective, you're looking at yours. So today we have some, not solutions, but maybe pointers that we can give you in regards to that.
yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Patience. So there are a number of shifts, let's call them shifts, a number of changes we can make to make life for us and for our teams a little bit easier or a little bit simpler. Some of them, all of them, in fact, as I look at my list in front of me, are dead easy to do, but they're also very easy not to do.
Mm,
So they do need a little bit of thinking about. You need to think about things like your language, the way you ask questions. You don't need to worry too much about your team. Although you do need to think about the team a little bit in terms of if I ask a question that way, will they get it? So what sort of language is your team used to? I just gave Patience an example where I was talking to my daughter about something. I could see there was something not quite right last weekend. And so I used the language appropriate to her typical style. And she responded brilliantly. And
mm,
she told me what was bothering her. It wasn't something about me. It was something, but it was something about her world that mattered. So because of phrasing the question in the right way, I got the right response, the positive result. Excellent. The thing is, part of the challenge is that we've got to recognize where the wall is, that there is a wall.
yeah.
Sometimes it's dead easy, really easy. Team's not speaking. There's an icy atmosphere. It's almost scary. It's kind of like that phrase treading on eggshells. We don't want to break the eggshells and all that sort of stuff. Or we might have the banging door, the banging bedroom door, especially. So we've got to be aware of where the wall is and try and
Mm,
find out if we don't know already why there's a wall there. And one of the things that we as humans tend to do, because we've learned it in society and through our upbringing and all that stuff, is we try and fix stuff. And
yes.
we're great at it. We're really good. I'm going to fix it. I'll fix it. And I've heard people say, one of my friends actually said it to me this morning. I'll fix that. And she was talking about an interaction between her and somebody else, which was quite interesting. Sometimes what we need to do rather than try and fix is connect.
Mm,
Because by connecting and having a positive connection, fixing is happening. And we don't need to try and fix things because it happens. It takes place there. So that's quite cool. So let's think about one of those shifts. It's easy for parents to say, my kids aren't listening. How do I make them listen? That is a terrible question. But yet, I think I have probably thought it at some point in the past, despite my training and all my experience and all of that stuff. So instead, how about we say, how do I help my team to be heard or to feel heard? Because the result of that is so positive and also quicker than trying to make them listen.
Yeah.
So have a think about your language. The thing is, if our teams are not feeling heard or they're not seen or feeling not seen, or if we're judging them all the time, even just a little bit, what happens? They go into defense. And when they get into defense mode, it's usually a road to nowhere. And it's certainly not got any bridges in it. You know, it's barrier after barrier after barrier. In fact, they're kind of throwing the barriers over their shoulders as they run away. You know, so we've got to think carefully about that.
This is
So we can say things like,
mm,
I can see this matters to you. Tell me some more. So you've done two things. You've taken the side that something's bothering them, and that makes them feel good. Oh, they're seeing me, they're hearing me. So tell me some more. It's an invite. And it's not a threatening question or anything like that. The words don't need to be perfect. The most important thing is being there, being present.
mm.
So what do you think, Patience? Have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, and I think what you said is exactly right. So at the end of the day, is being present and showing that you are also listening to their point of view. So, um, as a parent, it can be really easy, as Steve mentioned already, when you are running everywhere, there's things happening. Listen, you're juggling so many roles. You're juggling so many roles, but um, if you've listened to previous episodes, you'll hear Steve speak about that, myself. You can pause if it's really hot. If it's really hot, you can pause. And when you pause, just think of a question. Like Steve was mentioned a few questions now. You can make your own question, but just think of a question that is gonna pull you away from this conflict zone or this like going against the wall zone and more into like this is open, So just a quick example. So I did a training in terms of like conflict resolution, and when you are in the midst of things, someone may want to attack you. Nothing to do with this, but I want to explain something to you. So what they explain to us is that you should always have your open palm. Open palm means I'm listening. It means no, there's no limit. I mean there's no limit. There's no danger here. I'm listening. I'm not going into action mode. I'm not attacking. I'm not doing anything. I'm just listening. So just think of it at this image in your mind when you're in that conflict zone. How can I build a bridge, open hand? And then you think of those questions that you can ask.
Yeah. They don't always need to be questions as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes, obviously, a question is necessary and important. But as I just said a few minutes ago, I c- my example statement is, I can see this matters to you. Tell me
Mm.
more. Not a question. It's very open. You know, so there's no restriction in the way that they might want to answer, which is quite helpful. So let's move on to another one. As parents, I would guess if we could get 100 parents in a room and said, give us the short descriptions of what a parent does, a lot of them will say, we're teachers. So we're there to teach our kids, blah, 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 whatever that might be. Well, that's not always helpful. So if
Mm,
we've got a teen who's suffering from what's happening in their world, they don't know what's going on, they're trying to find out who they are and all of that sort of stuff. If we try to teach them, that's going to create resistance. And if we create resistance, we're building barriers, not bridges. So instead of saying, let me teach you something, we can say, help me out. Let me learn who you're becoming. Teach me, in other words. So we're swapping roles. And I think that is a very powerful thing to do. The thing is with teens that they're not many adults. They're emerging adults, whatever you want to call it, but they're not many adults. Like the Victorians had this idea that children were adults in miniature and they used to dress them so. So they're emerging humans. So we can ask questions of our teens like, what do you think about that?
mm,
Or what's hard for you right now? Because that puts the ball in their court and it shows that you're curious. You're not reacting to their behavior. You're getting involved and you're looking at the beliefs beneath the behavior, which is really important. So that's something else worth thinking about. So let's not try to be teachers. Let's try to be coaches. I think we had a conversation before this podcast. Patients and I are lucky. We have a lot of experience as coaches, never mind the therapy, the counseling, all that stuff. So we have all this experience of coaching, how to ask questions, how to phrase questions, what sort of things to use to lead people to their own conclusions about things, amongst others. Well, maybe that's what we need to be doing with our teams. But yeah, not every parent has had the luxury of being trained to be a coach.
yeah.
I'm not suggesting they should all go out and do that, but it might not be a bad thing.
Well, maybe you don't have to do that. Maybe you can just contact us and we can support you with it. And another thing I want to add on this subject is think of it as reverse mentoring. So you are kind of like a mentor, or you have a role, and they look up to you, your children, your teens. So think of it on the other side, because really and truly, you haven't lived their lives. So how can you understand their perspective or point of view, or what is it that they want to explain? We can't. So when you open up that space, which Steve was just talking about understanding where they're from, so learning from them, you are opening this kind of like reverse mentoring, and you're being mentored on how they see life, you know? It brings a total different perspective. And if you can, which is not easy because we all have our own point of views, but if you can, is to stay neutral in your response,
Yep.
I would say.
That is
Because
challenging, let's be
it
honest.
is really challenging, but when you think of it, putting your opinion across could at the same time negate exactly what you've just done before.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the idea is
So
to give space.
do we have time for another patient?
I guess we don't.
I guess we don't. Right. Okay. So we'll do some more next time around.
It's-
Um, have a think about these things. So if you're feeling the strain with your team, like patients said, you can contact us. You can talk to the patients or I or both of us, and we can work this out. But don't wait for a better moment if there's strain or tension around. Don't wait for a better moment. Think about some of the things we've been talking about today and try to make a small shift in the way you
Mm,
so if you find yourself often in that let me teach you something role, try to switch it to try and get them to teach you something. And just think about how can I do that? You know their language, you know what they respond to. So have a think about it. The important thing, as I said a little while ago, is we need as parents of teens to be present. and they need to know that we're present. So that's it from me for today. I'm not going to say anymore.
And you see, so I'm gonna say just the final words then. Final words are in everything the I think I said it already, but I'm gonna repeat it. There's no right or wrong. There's just experiences experiences, and in those experiences is two of you, so yourself and your child, and we are here to give you guidance. We are here to support you, to teach you. Maybe I wouldn't say teach you, but to give you some of the tools that you can use to then be more into a manageable relationship,
Yeah,
a better relationship with your children.
yeah,
All right. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next week for the next episode. But in the meantime, if you need any support, contact us. You've got our details on the page, and we'll be contacting you and supporting you with your children.
no.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.